I describe them and the assignments that I give you as examples to these approaches. So first we're going to talk about a genre-based approach, which I have there in the bottom right. And in a genre-based approach, you discuss the different academic genres that students might encounter in other disciplines, or the genres that are common in those disciplines. Second, we'll talk about a topical approach to writing in the disciplines. And in this approach, you might have students look at a particular issue or a topic, but look at it from different disciplinary perspectives and understand how different disciplines approach the same topic, what kinds of questions they ask, how they might engage in inquiry about that topic. And then finally, we'll talk about a more rhetorically based approach, which uses rhetorical principles to understand the rhetorical work that different kinds of writing are doing in those disciplines. And I'll specifically introduce you to a framework that we use to help students analyze academic writing that we found to be really successful. So first, let's take a look at a genre-based approach. Now, for each of these approaches, I've given you a guiding question that I hope will help you to understand what it is that we're asking students to really think about when we're engaging in this approach to writing in the disciplines. And then we'll also take a look at one example assignment. And it's just one of many possible assignments. And during the Q&A at the end, we could talk about some other possible assignments that you might use or activities that you could do in classes. But I wanted to give you at least one possibility that would illustrate what I'm talking about. So in a genre-based approach, the guiding question is, what are the common genres in a particular discipline, and what conventions do those genres share? If you're digging even deeper into this, you might ask students, where do those conventions come from? As I said earlier, what values do those conventions represent? This approach, of course, draws really heavily on genre theory and on the work in writing across the curriculum, and specifically in the diagram that you have on the right. I've drawn on the work of Mike Carter, whose essay that he wrote, it was published in 3 Cs in 2007, and it was an essay for which he won the Braddock Award. He talks about the concept of meta-genres when we're teaching students about writing in different disciplines, and advocates that we focus on these meta-genres, which are genres that cut across different disciplines, focusing on the genres that span different disciplines. And so if you focus on looking for the genres to discuss that span different disciplines and that students might encounter in different disciplinary areas because they'll be engaging in that same work in different classes, that can be of particular meaning to them. I wanted to focus on the 2 that are in the bottom right of the diagram, specifically just to give examples of what these meta-genres look like. So for empirical inquiry, if you wanted to introduce students to that as a meta-genre and then think of specific genres in the disciplines that do this kind of work, you might introduce them, for example, to the MRAD social science report and talk about what that looks like and what kind of work that does, or a laboratory report, the kinds of genres that academics use when they're reporting on data that they collect in their own research. On the bottom of that diagram, if you were focusing on the meta-genre of research from sources, you might have them do or analyze a couple of the genres that are pretty common in writing classes, like annotated bibliographies or reviews of literature. These are all examples of genres that do the same kind of work, but that cut across different disciplines. You see, of course, reviews of literature in every disciplinary area, although they might look slightly different depending on the discipline in which that review of literature appears. So let's take a look at an example of an assignment that you might use if you are engaging in a genre-based approach. So the example that I've chosen to show you is an annotated bibliography, and I want to give some credit for the assignment snapshot over on the right. This is taken from an assignment handout that one of my colleagues, Gwendolyn Reed, designed, and it was an assignment that we used in the first-year writing classes that Gwendolyn and I taught over the summer. this year. So, of course, an annotated bibliography or a literature review would be great examples of this genre, but what I wanted to show you in this assignment snapshot is how we took the genre of the annotated bibliography and gave it more of a writing in the disciplines focus too. So, of course, we talked about what the genre looks like, but then we asked students, if you see in the description of the assignment there, to develop a resource of annotated sources across the disciplines on an issue of your choice, and then they had to write an introduction that guided readers on how they selected the choices. So what we were asking them to do was to choose an issue that they're interested in and then select sources to include in their annotated bibliography that reflected how different disciplines approach that particular topic. And this is going to be a nice bridge into what we're talking about next with a topical approach. You can probably see how these different approaches overlap. But as we were working on the annotated bibliography, we